happened to Facebook? I mean, it used to be cool, right?
It's massively problematic.
My entire youth is archived on Facebook, from the good times to the bad times. But now it's become this toxic political wasteland. When did it start pulling apart the fabric of our society?
We certainly have a big responsibility to make sure that we address all of the new threats that come from the internet.
Self-regulation simply does not work.
These companies are too powerful. These companies control what we see.
We should absolutely be terrified about Facebook.
Where is everybody? Is everybody at home on Facebook? Facebook!
Vaping illness blamed for Antifa is carrying out CDC recommends against e-cigarettes, and what parents should know.
As clickbait headlines warp our view of the world, we're going down the rabbit hole to ask, how afraid should we really be? On this episode, Facebook.
QAnon crackdown. Facebook banning pages devoted to the Fringe conspiracy movement.
Australia's government is slamming Facebook's decision to block users in the country from all news content on its platform.
We have created tools that are ripping apart the social fabric of how society works.
Facebook to me is not cool, but I guess more people than ever are using it, despite that it always seems to be in a bit of hot water. I was once a very active user of Facebook. I'm not kidding when I say my youth is archived on the platform. But after 2016, things got weird.
I guess 2016 was a wake-up call for the world about how Facebook could be used to spread disinformation. What happened was that the Russian government, using the Internet Research Agency out of St. Petersburg, was able to set up groups and accounts that pretended to be on both sides of the aisle. They saw that they could very easily use Facebook to make these incendiary comments that would drive people crazy. And by doing that, they were just pitting people against each other and hoping that they would clash. They did. What they wanted to do was just create chaos so that you wouldn't know if the person you were looking at or the comment you were looking at was written by your friend or by someone in St. Petersburg.
Since then, the company has claimed to have made a number of changes to counter election interference.
We've been able to build systems that can proactively identify a lot of those efforts at this point.
But Pandora's box was already open.
What Russia did in 2016 was kind of show people how you don't have to tell the truth on Facebook.
Flash forward to 2020, I've seen a lot of COVID skepticism play out on Facebook.
It seems way too perfect, and now that we all of a sudden have a vaccine, seems a little perfect too.
I believe in the science of vaccines. I don't think what's in the needle is all good for you. I think there's stuff in the needle that's very harmful.
I get news from Facebook, obviously, because the national news just doesn't seem to be hitting anywhere anymore.
During this lockdown, I really had the time to okay, I'm going to sit down and spend 2 hours on this interview with this doctor and see what's going on here.
There's so much information out there. There's the black, there's the white, and there's everything in the middle, which is fucking confusing.
As public officials wavered in their COVID-19 response,
supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light,
conspiracy theories were amplified on social media. Then in May, the conspiracy documentary Plandemic became a viral hit and was widely shared on Facebook.
The first thing I saw that got really censored hardcore was the Plandemic video.
There is no dissenting voices allowed anymore in this free country, which is something I never thought I would live to see.
Well, the documentary was only on Facebook for less than a week. It had been viewed millions of times, and the removal of the video only created more alarm bells surrounding censorship.
So how does Facebook decide what's fake and what's real?
Facebook moderates posts through user complaints of machine learning. Artificial intelligence does a quick scan of the post to validate the complaint before it is passed to one of 15,000 human moderators to determine if the post goes against the company's community guidelines.
It's not just right-wing, MAGA-loving anti-vaxxers that spread misinformation on Facebook.
Everyone from the far left to the far right is capable of spreading disinformation, even unintentionally. This photo is real, but put a fake quote from Donald Trump's mother on it, and you've got shareable fake content.
Disinformation, it depends on what side you're defending or what you believe.
But with more than 2.74 billion active users across the globe, moderating Facebook is a gargantuan task.
It's a constant game of kind of, okay, we're trying to stop this problematic content, but something else is going to come along a couple of days later to challenge us again.
David Gilbert has been reporting on Facebook for years and recently documented the platform's laundering of the QAnon conspiracy from its origins on message boards to the mainstream.
QAnon initially started to move into the mainstream about a year ago at the beginning of the pandemic. When lockdown happened, people were at home and a lot more people started getting into it.
While QAnon was still being passed around fringe corners of the internet like 4chan and 8kun, users started bringing it onto Facebook.
People within the QAnon community saw what was happening and saw that more people were coming to it from a very much mainstream audience. So what they did was they shifted the message to kind of strip away the QAnon and a lot of the really out there conspiracy theories, and they focused essentially on the Save the Children campaign. That's how a lot of people got so-called red pill.
QAnon organizers began using the hashtag Save the Children to recruit followers on mainstream platforms. Meanwhile, the legitimate century-old charity Save the Children had to release a statement that they were unaffiliated with the campaigns using their name and a hashtag, which became an internet gateway drug to push believers into the deeper, darker parts of the QAnon conspiracy, with bizarre, baseless claims ranging from Hillary Clinton is the leader of a cabal that drinks the blood of children, and that a great storm would come in which Donald Trump would defeat the deep state.
But Facebook was warned about it a long time before they took any action. And they did take action. They took action late summer. It was pretty effective. They got rid of most of the accounts, most of the big groups. But at that stage, it was kind of too late.
Facebook purged whole communities from the platform and made it impossible to search for QAnon terms like Where We Go One, We Go All, Save the Children, and Great Awakening.
So far, since they implemented this, it's been very, very effective. They did that, and a couple of months later, it was Stop the Steal that they were trying to stop.
The Stop the Steal movement, which alleged systemic voter fraud in the 2020 election, culminated with a mob storming the Capitol building during the election certification on January 6th. Facebook removed Stop the Steal content 5 days later. While Facebook has put resources in the English-speaking markets, the platform has many more liabilities abroad.
The stuff that's happening in other languages, in other markets that we don't really hear about is really, really disturbing.
Human rights groups have criticized Facebook's move to censor anti-government posts in Vietnam. A UN fact-finding mission on Myanmar released a report in 2018 that noted widespread allegations that posts and messages on Facebook have increased discrimination and violence against the Rohingya Muslim community there. In June 2020, after an Ethiopian singer was assassinated, hate speech shared on Facebook created a frenzy of violence around the country.
It's sad because that's where Facebook's growth is happening right now, is in these developing countries. But they're launching without proper support in the languages that are spoken in the country.
While these countries may be on the other side of the world from Silicon Valley, it's also happening in Facebook's backyard. In the social unrest after George Floyd was killed, hate speech flooded the platform in the United States.
Our analysts, again, who study these issues, saw white supremacists organizing out in the open through Facebook groups.
Jonathan Greenblatt is the head of the Anti-Defamation League, which has set up an outpost in Silicon Valley to work with tech companies to combat anti-Semitism and hate online.
The big platforms like Facebook and Twitter and others, they've certainly done a lot of good in connecting people across communities and cultures, but they've also been exploited by extremists who've used the platforms to sort of, spread their poison.
The ADL and a coalition of advocacy groups band together to create Stop Hate for Profit, to get brands to pull ads from Facebook until the company responded to a list of demands to clamp down on hate speech.
Facebook initially said, we're not going to make changes to our product because some group demands that.
Stop Hate for Profit gave companies examples of their advertisements shown next to abhorrent hate content on the platform. Eventually, more than 1,000 companies paused ads for the month of July 2020.
It was the first time in Facebook's 15 years that they had ever seen advertisers leave the platform en masse.
Facebook slowly but eventually made a number of changes that Stop Hate for Profit had originally demanded, including researching racial bias on the network, banning Holocaust denier content, and hiring a VP of civil rights. Facebook has not attributed any of the changes to the advertising boycott.
I'm encouraged as this new Congress gets underway that we have a chance at taking on some of these issues. Specifically, I think Section 230.
Everyone seems to be talking about Section 230.
My executive order calls for new regulations under Section 230.
You don't get to pretend you're not a publisher and get a special benefit under Section 230.
A benefit from the immunity they're granted under Section 230.
Now, when I wrote Section 230 more than 20 years ago,
is Section 230 the answer to our problems?
It's got two parts, not just one.
As former FCC Commission Special Counsel Gigi Sun likes to say, there's both a sword and a shield to Section 230, a law that protects the entire ecosystem of the internet from big techies to microbloggers.
The shield protects online platforms from liability in case harmful content is posted by a third party. For example, a death threat in the comments section. It also provides these platforms a sword in case they want to remove content they find objectionable or goes against their terms of service. But this is where things get murky, because people feel like they're being censored when a platform removes content it finds objectionable.
When I think of freedom of speech, I think about the First Amendment and the fact that the government shall make no law impinging on my freedom of speech. The Constitution does not say Facebook shall not impinge on my speech.
The internet has grown up around Section 230, which was written and passed almost unanimously in a bipartisan fashion as part of the Communications Decency Act of 1996.
Any effort to reform the law today would most likely be partisan.
The agreement as to what to do about it isn't there because each party has very, very different concerns.
On one hand, Democrats want more moderation to stem the tide of perceived disinformation. On the other hand, Republicans want less moderation because they think it's perceived censorship.
Okay, they are private entities. We could talk about whether they're too powerful and whether they have way too much control over the public discourse. Right now, our antitrust law is painfully weak. Right now, the courts look at really only, what you pay as a consumer, whether the consumer is being harmed, right? So when they see a company like Facebook, they're like, well, look, it's free, right? So how are consumers being harmed? They're not looking at the impact on democracy.
It's hard to pin Facebook as monopoly when its service is free. But this hasn't stopped the Federal Trade Commission voting to sue Facebook for maintaining one.
Today's enforcement action aims to restore competition to this important industry.
And 49 U.S. Attorney Generals have filed a separate lawsuit with a similar complaint.
They also sent a clear message to the industry. Don't step on Facebook's turf. Or as one industry executive put it, you will face the wrath of Mark.
It's really hard to know how exactly we'd break up Facebook and other big tech companies. But their reluctance to make change harms everyone.
It's the most powerful company possibly that there has ever been in terms of the influence that it holds. And sitting on top of that is one 36-year-old in Menlo Park.
And that 36-year-old is none other than Mark Zuckerberg. But even Mark laments this power dynamic.
It's not sustainable over time for one person or even kind of one company's operations to be making so many decisions, balancing free expression and safety.
And it's true that Facebook has changed and continues to change.
They've added fact-checking to help readers spot disinformation without making other users feel censored, although some argue that scientific information should remain up for debate. After a February coup d'etat in Myanmar, Facebook announced that it was banning military-controlled state and media entities from Facebook and Instagram. And they've introduced new features to help users control how Facebook shares their data. These are certainly big wins, but if it weren't for consistent public outcry, who knows when that change would come?
The problem with monopolies is that they're not accountable to anybody. Why do you need to get better if nobody's pushing you?
We should be afraid of Facebook, because that means we'll be active participants in voicing for change. And this fear isn't just for Facebook, it goes for all of big tech.
The internet was created to connect the world. It shouldn't just be for big tech. It should be for everyone.